Good morning, ninth grade. We're on day 3, week 3 of remote learning.
Hi, everybody.
Today, we are working with the final leg of the poem that you chose earlier this week. So far, we have selected a poem and we've discussed why you chose that poem. Yesterday, you worked at analyzing the poem through 6 different elements: subject, concept, the tone, the feeling, all those types of things. Today, you're taking that same exact poem that you worked with, and you're now going to write a poem that responds to that poem of your choice, but you're only going to be zooming in on 2 of the elements that you worked with yesterday.
So if you look at the slides for today, you'll see that our title is Mirroring a Poem. So we don't want you to copy the poem because that's just copying, but we do want your poem to reflect 2 of those 6 elements of the poem. And we've given you an example after the Mindful Minute that we will take as a class. If you are watching this YouTube video, feel free to press pause, take 3 to 5 deep breaths.
So the poem that we have chosen is called Quarantine. This was not one of the original 5, but we're going to use this as an example. In this poem, after Mr. Allen reads it, we're going to look at just the theme of the poem and the form of the poem. And then when you go to write your poem and you mirror the poem of your choice, you're going to try to mirror the theme and mirror the form. And Mr. Allen wrote a sample poem in response to this one that we'll show you on the next slide. So the poem is called Quarantine.
Quarantine. Instead of not watching this film over Skype, giggling with a cat's tail curling in your face, why don't we take it outside, sneak out with last summer's coldest sun winking at us over her shoulder, and watch our limbs almost fall asleep to by the tongue of the river? Instead of my hands waking up red and confused in the mornings, veins spilling out alarmingly like folds over folds of a map, why don't I leave them in yours the way they were before every hour began to feel like an attempt to keep old scars buried? Instead of stalking each other's Spotify as part of our daily routine, why don't we go back and listen to that song together in front of a house we have locked ourselves out of, and you can teach me how to use less words to explain myself? By Annie, age 17.
Okay, so really quick, just one small change. We edited the word theme and we made it say concept, because when we're talking about themes, usually we're talking about theme statements, and concepts are just those big ideas that encompass the poem that we're talking about. So Mr. Allen is going to talk about the concepts that are present in this poem first.
Okay, so the concepts that really jumped out at me were repetition, isolation, and longing. There's repetition of particular words. I get a feeling of isolation. This poem was written during a quarantine that Annie went through last year or the year before. So this is not related to COVID, but it's a different, she was under quarantine for a different reason. And so there's a sense of being alone, or at least alone together. And there's also a sense of longing, wanting something different.
So the form, if we're looking at the shape and the structure that this poem has, I notice that there is obviously a title, and then there are 3 individual stanzas, right? Not paragraphs. When we're talking about poetry, we call them stanzas. So there's 3 stanzas. I see the repetition of, like Mr. Allen said, instead of, as the starter for those 3 stanzas. And then the last element that we saw was this rhetorical questioning of like, well, why don't I just? Why don't I? And you can see that at the end of each stanza, the first two in particular, there's a question mark. So I noticed how the punctuation was impactful in this poem.
To write my mirror version of Annie's quarantine, I tried to mirror just the number of stanzas. So there are 3 stanzas. I tried to mirror the number of lines in each stanza.
Mm-hmm.
I think I got that right.
Yeah.
And I tried to mirror these concepts of being alone, or being alone with maybe one other person, of wanting something more or wanting something different. And then I just sort of looked at my life where we are now, and I tried to fit my feelings into that shape.
So the poem reads, Quarantine. Instead of staring at my phone while we watch Netflix, you curled up in the couch with your mother's blanket on. Why don't we go out through the downstairs door, the one no one uses and sticks until you kick it, and play a game of tennis with an audience of deer while the Cardinals and Blue Jays raid the bird feeder? Instead of rolling out of bed just in time for Zoom meetings, hair a mess and clothes a mess and everything else a mess, jumping in the shower while the coffee percolates and the cereal goes soggy in the milk, why don't I get up early tomorrow to buy us both breakfast from that place we used to like before going outside seemed like an impossibility? Instead of group texting with our families, sending little jokes and silly pictures, why don't we all get together on our phones or iPads or whatever and sing and dance and play together and paint paintings with our hands and feet and hang them on the fridge? Mr. Allen, older than 17. I really like that poem, Mr. Allen.
Thanks.
I know because, you know, Mr. Allen is my homeboy, that he's up in Connecticut at his wife's family's house. So I'm imagining that your first stanza, you got a lot of inspiration from the nature that you're surrounded by right now with the
Yes.
and the Cardinals and the Blue Jays. Cool.
Yes.
Okay, so as you see, Mr. Allen has those same concepts of isolation and longing and wanting more. He has the same very similar structure and form that the original poem had, but he made it his own. And so that is going to be your task to do today with the original poem that you worked with earlier in this week. So you're going to write a poem that mirrors and I'm going to change this word, guys and girls, concept and form of a poem of your choice. Try to use the poem that you selected earlier this week so that you're working with the same text. But if you attempt this poem and you realize that it's just too difficult for you to do, you can select a different poem from the 5. We would like for you to work with the original one, but do the best you can, okay? You have tomorrow, Thursday, and today, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to take the time to write your own poem. So remember that it should be different, but the concept, changing that word again, and the form should be similar to the one that you are modeling your writing after.
Thursday and Friday, Ms. Kaplan has told us, Thursday and Friday are going to be advisory days. So you're going to meet with your advisor and maybe do something fun together. I am going to watch a museum tour with my advisory. We're going to go to a Russian museum together and watch some ballet inside an empty museum. And that's what you are going to do Thursday and Friday. Work with your advisory. Also, take some time for yourself. The way that we do mindful minutes, please try to take some time on Thursday and Friday to be quiet with yourself. There's a lot of noise in the world. We're all staring at our noisy screens. Try to take some time and just be quiet with yourself or with your family on Thursday and Friday. And this one is going to be very important for certain students, catch up on work you haven't done. for this class and other classes. There's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to write a semi-original poem. We're not even asking you to write a fully original poem because we're giving you the shape,
Yeah, you have
the
the model.
size, and you'll probably reuse a lot of the words from the original poem. So you've got plenty of time on Thursday and Friday to make up any reading responses for The Girl Who Smiled Beads, a final response for The Girl Who Smiled Beads, or the short moment narrative or short moment narrative graphic organizer. Don't go further back than The Girl Who Smiled Beads. I don't want to see anything about night. I don't want to see anything about the Odyssey. Yeah.
Some things are just too far back that it doesn't serve a purpose for you at this point to make up that work, because the work and the unit is not part of the conversation that we're now having at this point in our year. We tried our very, very best to really lighten the load of work that we gave you all this week. So we think and we hope that the assignment and the task that we're giving you is doable in the amount of time that you have. So that the intention is not to make anybody feel more overwhelmed or more stressed. And last but not least, of course, reach out to us. We're always here to help you. If you have any questions or concerns, check in with a buddy, check in with a peer. You guys are a class of 30. If not, you have friends in other classes that are all, ninth grade is all doing the same work. So use each other as a resource. And then if you still both cannot come to an understanding, reach out to your teachers and ask for help. But stay in communication, stay in touch, stay safe, stay healthy, and good luck, guys.
Wash your hands. Don't touch your face.